Hi, I'm CarlaMay Sheremata, and I just had the most amazing talk with Kim Sorrelle. Thank you so much, Kim, for having me on your show, and I'm looking forward to doing more with you.
Welcome to the show. I am so glad you're here. I'm Kim Sorrelle. I am a writer, a speaker, an entrepreneur. I get to do a lot of great things in life. One of my favorite things, though, is to meet really cool people. I get to meet the coolest people. Today is absolutely no exception. CarlaMay Sheremata. Did I say that right? Oh, my.
You did.
Oh, I did. Okay, good. So CarlaMay, when I met CarlaMay, I was like, I need to know this woman. Like, she should live next door and we should have coffee every day. Like, that just should be the way it is. We just hit it off and realized we were kindred spirits from the beginning. And so I've been looking forward to spending this time with her. And I know you'll enjoy spending this time with her. CarlaMay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you are here. You look fantastic. And every time I see you anywhere, like on any other show or any other thing, you just have this glow, just this happiness about you that is so contagious. Like I can't help but smile when I watch the things that you do. So thanks for making me
Thank you.
smile. So you've done
Thank
a lot of cool things in your life that we're going to get to, and you've got cool stuff going on right now. But first, I'd like to start out with how was CarlaMay at 8 years old?
Wow, at 8 years old, I was a young girl in a classroom being told by a teacher that I was fat, ugly, and would never get anywhere in life. And that um, that little bit really took a toll. I didn't realize how much and for how long throughout my years. And it's amazing what teachers, what parents, what other people say to us. We're told, oh, just wipe it away. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt. And I don't believe that because the smallest word can have the biggest effect on us as a human being.
It's so true, and they stick with us, and
Yes.
they can define us, and they can shape us, mold us, and especially words that come when you're a child, when you're in your developing years, and somebody says something, and what a horrible thing for a teacher to ever say to anybody. What a horrible thing
Yeah.
for any person on earth to ever say to anybody. And so it had to just cut like a knife. Like I can't even imagine being that little girl and hearing that. And what are you supposed to do as an 8-year-old? How do you wrap your brain around that one? I would think it'd just be so easy to go, well, she told me I am, so I must be.
Yeah. And a lot of that, I think some of that stuck with me. I had wonderful parents who, when I would go home and, just talk about my day, were there for me and supported. I was raised in a Christian home, and so faith was a huge part as well. But again, as an 8-year old and kind of looking forward now, or when I look back now, um, you don't know where to go. You kind of sit there, and I was different already. I never fit into any box. And so when I can actually just picture me in that desk right now and looking at everybody else, and then there's me and kind of this ugly duckling of feeling I don't fit in anywhere, very creative, very musical, not I'm logical, but not to the extent of, math, science, that kind of stuff. But I was very gifted with music. And so as I went on, God really started using those parts of my life in very different ways. I sang all over. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I was able to sing all over places and in different churches. And I was able to use that gift. So people saw me in a very different light and in a very different way. But yet, as I grew up, I was still bullied. I wasn't, the prettiest girl or the most popular girl in school, and and even in church, I was bugged and bullied in church because I didn't fit in, whatever that meant and whatever that means now. So it has. I look back and I turned 49 this year, and I'm sitting here thinking, wow, it's taken so long to allow that, that little bit of saying to work through, and for me to actually finally realize I don't have to worry about what people think about me. And it doesn't matter because I'm me. God loves me. He made me, and I'm worthy and I'm deserving. And that has taken a lot of years to
Mm.
figure that out.
Yeah, yeah. I think words, you're so right about all of it. Words do so much damage, and we tend to take them on, as luggage that we carry around, and they stick with us. And it is hard to forget about it, or somehow try to figure out a way to reframe it. I lived this year figuring out the true meaning of love. And one thing that I figured out was I used 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, etc. And when I got to love keeps no record of wrongs, what I figured out about it is, people say things, people do things, people have hurt us, and you might forgive, but you never forget. So, like, what does that possibly mean? But what I figured out is that we're in charge of the narrative.
Mhm.
And so we get to pick how we take things on. And in knowing that, I think there's so much freedom in that. Like two people can be in the same, and cars right next to each other in the traffic jam on the freeway. And one guy's honking his horn and he's so mad and he's shaking his fist and he's yelling out his window, right? And his blood pressure's rising, and pity the person who gets to see him next. And the next guy is like, I'm just gonna chill. There's nothing I can do, whatever. I just take it with stride. Well, it's the same situation, but two different narratives. And one thing that I figured out is you can go back on the narrative. So the things that you framed a certain way in your past, you can reframe, you can rewrite the narrative. And so instead of, like, for me, I get a guy who was a freshman in high school and brand new to this school. And it was I had a game day. I played basketball and it was in the fall, and he had to wear a dress on game day. And he came up to my locker, and there's all these strangers. It's right at the beginning of school. And he came up to my locker and he said, those are the ugliest legs I've ever seen. And oh my gosh, I was devastated, right? Because you hear those things and you're like, worse at 8 years old, I truly believe, than at 14 years old. But still, I was like, oh my gosh, how do I ever wear a dress again? Like, it was crushing, but I've had to reframe that. I've had to rewrite that narrative to,
Yeah,
this guy sat in his life that, well, I don't know what was going on in his life that would lead him to come and do that, because most people
yeah,
didn't, right?
yeah,
So anyway, long, whatever, but uh, to what happened with you, and but that is hard, and it does take years, and right, you gotta figure it out. And so now, so the teacher said you felt like you were the ugliest one, you said, and she said that you were ugly. So now what does it feel like that you're the prettiest one?
Huh. Um, well, thank you for that. It's, you know, I still struggle with that. I'll be completely honest. There are days I look in the mirror and I don't like what I see. I've got, weight to lose. I'm not fit enough. I try to really watch how much social media I go on because I don't like it. But of course, some of my friends and stuff, but I watch on there and it's like, oh, look, they're doing this, or oh, they're doing this. And then, of course, that imposter syndrome comes in of, well, why should I be doing what I'm doing? No, does anybody want to hear it? All that kind of stuff. And I still struggle with that to this day. And, you know, each day I have to wake up and just ask God to clear my mind, let me know, and continue to let me know that I am His child, and that um, I'm doing what he wants me to do, and I am a light in this world. And one of the things I started a company, and I called it Diamonds in the Rough, because every single one of us has a diamond. We each have our stories and our traumas, and our diamond has been tarnished in some way. But all it takes is one person to come up and to polish off a little part of that, to let it start shining again. And no matter who you are, that diamond can shine in so many different ways once we just allow it to shine. And I think it's so important for us to remember that, especially as women,
Mm,
because we take on so much and we do so much for so many other people, and we forget about ourselves until it's too late.
right, right. Yeah, what you just said was so good because yes, I mean, we're all individual. Nobody ever like us. Nobody will ever be like us. We're one of a kind, and we should embrace that and realize we're created in his image. And so we should love ourselves because we're created to be exactly who he created us to be. And that's all you have to be. Like you don't have to
Yes.
be something else. And there are these pressures from society, if you let them get to you, which it's easy to let them get to you, right? And people get to figure out for some reason somebody gets to be in charge of who's pretty and who's not. And I don't know, it doesn't ever make any sense to me because when I see people, I just see the beauty because I love it that we all look different. I love it that
Yes.
we all are unique in our own special way, and then we get to meet each other. Like how cool is
Yes.
that? I mean, the world would be boring if it was full of Kims. Like there's one of me is plenty. There doesn't
Yeah.
need to be any more.
Me too.
So yeah, so I love that. It's so true. We are all diamonds and polish off somebody's diamond today, right?
Yes.
Like be the
Yes.
one to help somebody polish off their diamond, tell them how great they are,
Yeah.
how beautiful they are, how much you appreciate them and
And it's just being kind and gentle. And, I was a police officer for about 22 years. And that is the one thing you never know what somebody is dealing with. And so, or what has just happened to them. So every time you come into contact with somebody, be kind because that could be you one day and your life has just fallen apart and you've got to go somewhere and something happens or you don't signal going into another lane or something because your mind is not there. And I mean, that could be you. So instead of yelling or fingering somebody or whatever, just be kind. And
yeah,
and I think that's just so important as well.
yeah, I think so too. It's so true. It's so true. So you went from school that wasn't the greatest experience for you, and church
Yes.
not the greatest experience. And there's lots of women, unfortunately, that have been in your shoes, that have had that experience. And so what, where did you go after school? Like, how did you decide to be a police officer and
Well, so
work
I
up?
ended up after school heading in and doing psych and sociology and a minor in music because, of course, back then everybody went to university. That was the way that it happened. So did that, got out and started working in an oil company. And from there, just kind of realizing, and now I'm not like a bra burning woman or rah rah, any of that kind of stuff, but I was watching how men and women have so many different and beautiful traits and how some of these men who are making a lot of money and they couldn't turn a photocopier on, they couldn't get their coffee, they couldn't craft an email, that kind of stuff, or type on the type back then on the typewriter,
Mhm.
that stuff, but yet and yet they were making all this money. And I thought, I mean, I can do that too. And back then, as women, we couldn't move any higher, or it was very difficult to move higher up in these companies. So, what's the next thing? Why not go into a job where men and women make the same money doing the same thing? So, I'd always loved forensics and criminal law and that kind of stuff. So, I ended up applying to the police service. And within a couple months, ended up getting right in. So I knew the doors were swinging open because people were getting deferred for years at that time. But then it was interesting because God put a little bit of a niche in there and ended up, I got diagnosed with cancer at the age of 26. And again, it was cervical cancer. So I I was flabbergasted actually, because thinking, holy cow, me of all people, what is going on here? So I was right in the process of going through into the police, and this happened, and I was informed, we're going to do heavy radiation so we can get it as quick as we can and as hard as we can. And so I did the radiation, and I was informed by my file manager with the police, well, why don't you just stop going through the process, finish up your treatment, and then come back? But something inside of me said, don't, just keep going with the process, keep going with your treatments. Because I think inside, I don't know if I would have come back.
Mm.
Maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't, but I don't know. But there was something inside, and I believe it was the Holy Spirit just saying, nope, you can do this, go. So I did, and got through treatment, got into the police, and had an amazing career. It's hard as a female, especially. I counted 72 bruises one day during our training, and I came in, I had, I mean, nails, makeup, hair, I loved clothing, all that kind of stuff. Came into a career where I have a blue polyester uniform. And and that's it. I get to add a tie or a sweater on for accessorizing, right? And and very male dominated again. So
Hmm.
here comes this thing, I guess you can call me, coming in all pretty and pink and ready to go. And so again, I didn't fit into a box. So in classes, I went through again, being harassed and bullied in classes with men and women who were going to be on the street with me. Um, and you're hoping that they're going to be there to back you up and to, if you have to be partnered with them in this kind of thing, but yet going through the similar harassment stuff that I had gone through earlier on. But yet as adults now. So
Mm.
things don't change. People don't change.
Yeah.
But when I look back now, again, I believe God put me into this position as a light because I look through my career, and no matter what area I went in, that was something that was continuously told. CarlaMay, you treat everybody the same. You treat the janitor the same you would treat a president of a company. You have not changed who you are, and you have never fit into the cop box.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're so right that how you are as a child, you can certainly be as an adult. And you hope that people that were bullies, and there's a whole psychology behind that, right? Why someone's a bully and what's going on in their life and whatever, that they somehow come to terms with it as an adult and don't bully people anymore. You hope that people can see themselves in situations that they don't want to repeat. But it's so true that you do get bullied as an adult. It's so easy to do. And unfortunately, there are people that live in, I think, sadness because it's not a fun way to live at all. But so you're telling us this right after you go, and then I was 26 and I had cancer, and then the police academy. You were 26 years old and you had cancer. Like,
Yeah,
holy cow, how did you even find that out?
You know, I found out from I went to see naturopaths just because I've had medical issues all my life with my kidneys, and so I'd been on antibiotics for most of my life. And so as I got into adulthood, and my mom was very much with this. She at younger ages, she would naturopaths weren't really looked upon as they are now. But whenever we could, we would go and find one that could kind of help so I wouldn't have to be on medication and try to just find another natural way so my body could at least start healing on its own. And I was seeing my naturopath at that time, and he noticed a speck in my eye. And he just said, have you been to the doctors recently? And I had just been for a checkup. And I said, yeah, I have been. I said, but I've noticed I've been feeling quite tired and low energy. So I kind of thought maybe my iron was out, something was out that way. So I went and got some blood work done. But he said, go back. And so I did go back, and then he gave me just kind of a list of questions to kind of ask them and just say, this is what I'm feeling. Can you check this? Can you check this? And that was actually how it was located. So again, if I wouldn't have been there and the doctors didn't see anything that was different or out of whack at the time either, But I also learned at that time, it's amazing. A lot of times our blood doesn't, well, what the doctors order sometimes is not exactly what our blood needs to show.
Mm.
So that was how that all came about. And as a Christian, having the big C, it was very interesting to watch how people treat you. People don't know, and I mean, this could be in all areas, but I'm just looking at it as a Christian and in church. People didn't know what to say. They didn't know. It was kind of like I felt like I had a plague, like this big C on my forehead. Um, but instead of asking, how are you doing? Or can I bring you a coffee? Or, do you need anything? It was more so many just kind of stepped back. And I wish that I look back now, and if I was diagnosed now, I know how I would handle some of the stuff different with people, saying, it's okay, you can ask me. I'll tell you the truth. I'll say it sucks, or, I'm really tired, or that kind of stuff, if you really want to hear that. But just ask me.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And I think, and I went through cancer. I was 47. I was a little bit older, breast cancer. And and then lost my husband during it to cancer. And so I think the same it's with disease that people fear, and with grief, the same thing, that
Yep.
people tend to kind of back off. I don't know if like people are afraid if they say, how are you, that you're going to tell the truth. Just
Yeah.
take a minute, to tell,
Yeah.
instead, I'm fine, I'm fine, the what we typically say, right?
Yeah.
Or that it's somehow contagious. I don't know, it's not contagious. But and then with grief, I think it's the same way. People tend to back off because they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
They don't want to be uncomfortable. And the reality is, ask people. It's okay. Sometimes we need to talk about what we're going through. It's
Yeah.
okay to ask, and we want to talk about the person we lost. We
Yeah.
want to tell the great stories, right? So, like, don't be afraid to approach people, talk to people, befriend, and be a friend to people when they're going through hard times. I mean, that's the time you really need people, and that tends to be the time people really back away.
Yes. And I think too, not enough people, when they ask, how are you or how are you doing, really want to know how you are doing. And so again, it's like they're just hoping for the I'm fine, and then they can keep going. And I think it's that fear also of what's somebody going to say if I ask this? And then, for somebody who's lost somebody, how do I don't want them to get upset. What am I supposed to do if they start crying
Mhm.
or they start showing emotion?
Right, right,
Right? It's
right.
like
And
it's
it's
you.
okay to show
Yeah.
emotion. Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so true. Or even maybe they forgot about it for a minute. And if I bring it up, then it just comes back. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? They haven't forgot about it. And
Yeah.
and when you're going through cancer, you don't forget about it.
No.
You know, it's like
No.
it walks with you. It
Yeah.
travels wherever you travel. And
Yeah.
so, and grief is the same way. It's I think of it this way quite often. People use the phrase get over it. Like even with disease, there's a grief that happens, and especially a disease that is part of your womanhood, right? There's
Yeah.
there's something about that too. But uh, people will say, well, get over it. You
Yeah.
know, it's over, so just move
Yeah.
on, get over it.
You've
And
had your time,
yeah, right, right, right. And I don't like either one of those things because you never get over it
Yeah.
because it's part of your life, right? Like I'll forever love my husband. Like, I'm not going to get over it,
Yeah.
but you can get on top of it. And instead of having those days where all you want to do is stay in bed and cry, you have days like this where I can be with you and we can laugh and enjoy our
Yeah.
time together, right? So you get on top of the grief, you get on top of the disease, you get on top of things rather than getting over things. And
Yeah.
we need to give people grace to do that.
Yes. And I love that getting on top of it, because one of the things I look at, even the mind over matter. I think a lot of times, I know that having having Jesus with me along the way, that I believe that was what took me through. And, talking to even non-Christians about going through, because they said, how did you just keep going through? And so I would say a little bit, well, I've got my faith and prayer, which was huge. But I think also I wasn't ready to give up. I wasn't willing, whatever the giving up to me was at that time, I wasn't willing to do that. And I look at the same because I ended up also going through a divorce and coming from a family where nobody at the time, anybody down the lines had ever been divorced. So now the black sheep, and you talk about grieving, again, in a very different way. And but looking through that, again, people don't know what to say to you. Are they supposed to go rah rah, like you got out of it, or are they supposed to go, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, right?
Right, right. Oh, it's so true. Yeah, yeah. Actually, I was with somebody one time, that brings that to mind. That it hit me funny at the time, like, hmm. But later I thought about it and I thought, well, you know what? She's right. I was with her. We spent a couple days together, so we were meeting people and we were together. And so people would come up and say, "Ah, you're traveling with your husbands," and she'd say, "Well, no, I'm divorced." And they go, "Oh." And I'd say, "Well, yeah, my husband passed away." And they go, "Oh, I'm so sorry." So to me, they were saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry." To her, they're like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But divorce is hard.
Yeah.
Divorce is hard, and not everybody wants. I don't know if anybody wants it. I mean, it's not like you walk down the aisle and you go, "Man, I hope I get divorced someday," right?
Exactly. You don't,
No.
and you give the benefit of the doubt to your partner because that's what I would hope somebody would do for me, right?
Hmm.
And you just kind of do that. But yeah, that was you don't walk down the well, who knows nowadays, but back
Yeah.
then you didn't walk down the aisle saying, okay, if this happens or if, so
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it is grieving. You
yeah,
do grieve because you grieve the loss of the future you dreamed of.
yeah,
You're grieving this relationship that you thought was going to last forever. There's grief that you go through with divorce that is so hard. And it's we need to give people grace. And you can ask those people too, how are they doing and how are you feeling
yeah,
and what's going on? And it's okay,
yeah,
to
yeah,
share
exactly.
and not judge, never judge. Because you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. You don't know what circumstances have led to whatever it is. And so
Yeah,
just give grace and just love people and
yeah,
don't judge them, just love them. Because it's really our only job. That's all we have to do. That's what we're told. The one thing we have
yeah.
to do is love. That's it.
Love your neighbor.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
it.
So easy. So easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you were a police officer.
Yes. So was a police officer and for 8.5 of those years, I got to spend in the high schools as a school resource officer. And that was probably the most impactful for me, of like that impacted my life so greatly and richly, working with these youth, spending time with teachers and with, leaders that are working with our kids and our youth and watching what goes on. And I mean, it was very different back then, because I started about 15 years ago in the schools. And, seeing the difference now, especially because phones were kind of in, flip phones were still, some people had flip phones still, BlackBerry was like the big thing. So again, very different. But one thing I did learn and notice is from when I was growing up to 15 years ago to now, the stuff that goes on with our youth has not changed. Whether it's suicide, whether it's bullying, self-harm, eating disorders, pregnancy, all of that is still happening, but just in a very different way because of social media.
Hmm.
And even self-esteem and dealing with self-image and confidence. Now I look at our young boys and girls or our youth, they take self-image and confidence by how many likes they get to a post, right?
Yeah.
And I sit back and think, oh my goodness, where would I be at if that was what was running my life now, like back then, you know? So that opened my eyes back then to so much. And youth have always been a huge part of my heart, and I'm very passionate about them. So being able to do that, and for myself being able to impact youth and bring light into their world and into their family's world was such a an honor for me during that time.
Yeah, that had to be quite a job. I saw an interview with one of the teachers that was on staff while you were on staff, and she said sometimes her kids would get in trouble on purpose just so they could go be with you.
They did. They would come down, and that is for me. I was like, wow, okay. But I gave them a safe space. They felt safe. They felt that they could be themselves. There was no judgment. Sometimes, yeah, they got into trouble because that was also my job of enforcing rules and laws. But the biggest thing was building relationships and letting them know that there is somebody there that will back them and that will be there for them no matter what, even when they get into trouble.
Yeah, wow. Even when they get into trouble,
Yeah.
that is so good. That is so important. And there's a lot of kids that don't have that in their life, a person uh who will be that person for them. And when my kids were little, I just always prayed, Lord, bring another adult into their life. Like,
Mhm.
you've got the parents, but you take things differently from somebody who is not a parent, right? And so it can be so important and so worth it to have some adult that your kid can look up to and admire, and somebody you want them to look up to and admire, who's worthy of that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
make all the difference in a kid's life, that one teacher that takes the extra time with somebody, and
Mhm.
whatever it is. And so what a wonderful thing. I'm sure they were devastated when you decided to leave that job.
Well, I kind of got tenured out, which was hard because I loved it. But the one thing that I really noticed, and the kids actually brought this forward to me, is how many times we tell our kids certain things and we'll tell them 50, 60, it feels like 100 times, and they don't get it. And you're just like, literally, you want to bang your head against the wall and saying, it seems so easy. Why are you not getting it? Then something on social media or a friend or a friend's parent or somebody says the exact same thing to them. And it's like, oh my gosh, I have seen the light. Mom, you'll never believe this. And I saw this when I was in the schools. I would have young kids come in and, like, I was in the high school, so 13, 14 coming in, 15. And I would say something to them, and they're like, oh my gosh, I totally understand. My mom told me that over and over again. And I'm like, ah.
That's so
So,
funny. Yeah.
yeah. So I thought, you know what? Okay, even if I get like flustered with my own kid, because I have a 16-year-old son, just, if he comes home one day and says, guess what, mom? This is what I heard, or this is what I learned. Let him know I'm so glad that you understood that. Like, that's awesome.
Right. No kidding. No kidding.
Right?
That's so good. Yes. Yeah. So it leads you to this incredible project that you've taken on, and helping people strike up conversation with their kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and I think too often parents aren't sure what to say and might not be having dinner at the same time because there's sports or whatever after school or whatever's going on, meetings, who knows. And so when you get those times with your son, your daughter, how do you bring out what you want to bring out in that? How do you open up a conversation that leads to an actual conversation, not just one word answers, right?
Yep. Yep. And that's so important. And the reason, so I wrote a book called Youth Truth, Engaging in Conversations That Can Change Lives. And the whole thing with this book is I would watch kids come in, I'll call them youth, but they're youth, but I'll call them kids, came into my office. And so many times, they'd come in, shut the door, and just start crying. And we'd be talking about situations that they were going through. And then I'd ask them, well, have you had a chance to talk with your parents or somebody like a hockey coach or somebody that you can sit down and talk to? And so many times they were like, no, I don't know how to have a conversation, or I'm scared to have a conversation because my parents will say, I should have known better, or, or they'll give me advice right away. So I thought, I looked at myself because my guy was younger back then, 2, 3 years old. So I was just kind of starting into kind of getting to terrible twos, terrible threes, that kind of stuff. And that really put on my heart, I need to figure out how to bridge this gap where no matter who you are, parent, grandparent, aunts, uncles, teachers, um, how you can get and connect with your kid, because social media, friends, TV are connecting. How come we can't connect? And there are parents who have wonderful connections with their kids. And I had one lady tell me, well, I don't have to worry about that because I talk to my kid all the time. That's great. But yet that one kid would come in to talk with me, and the mom had no clue about some of the stuff that actually was going on. So it is so important to have a safe space that your kids can know that they can come to. And that might look like even just sitting together and watching a movie or a show where maybe nobody's talking, but you're in the same room. You're not on your phone because, of course, you think, oh, right on. I can sit and watch a movie. I can go through emails. But quality time, not quantity. Quality is so important because sometimes we'll only have 10 minutes before we have to run off and drive kids someplace. And that 10 minutes might be the most eye-opening and the most endearing and heartfelt between the two of you that you'll have all night.
Wow.
And one of the things that I did was I love the love languages. And so I had my son do the love languages for teen quiz. And I had an idea what his love language was, but I wanted to, make sure. And it's quality time. He doesn't care about what he gets for gifts. He doesn't care about, you can tell him you're proud of him, that kind of stuff. But if you do not put your phone down and actually sit with him and just be with him, everything else is lost.
Mm. Okay, you just dropped so much gold there because I'll tell you, it's true. I mean, I see interactions with people and their phone is on and in front of them. And if it buzzes, they look at it. And
Mhm.
they get a notification, they look at it. And I always think, man, wouldn't it be nice if the phones could stay in the purses, the pockets, stay, turned off, just turn them off. There was a day when I was growing up that you couldn't be in touch with somebody 24 hours a day. Like
Yeah,
you'd leave
yeah,
a message. There wasn't even answering machines when I was growing up until a
yeah,
little bit later, I guess, when I was growing up. But there weren't answering machines. So you had to just call back again when they're home, or whatever. And now it's like we want instant notification that somebody just liked something on our Facebook, or instant notification that somebody's trying to get in touch with us, whatever it is. And the world was not that way forever and ever. It's only been that way the last few years. And so
yeah,
it's okay to not be in touch 24/7. Of course, if you got something, you're worried about some emergency because something's going on with somebody. But otherwise, how often do you go to a restaurant and you see families and every single one of them is on their,
yes. They're on a date and it's like this.
yeah.
And or else they're taking pictures of their food, not talking, posting. And my husband and I will do that. We'll go out and we'll watch. And it's like, oh my gosh, they have not put their phone down. Like, do they even realize they came together? Or, like I
Right.
would love to start a restaurant where it was no phones. Like, you could have your phone, whatever, on the side, but you could not be on your phone.
Yeah.
I don't know how well I would do, but you know, I think that there's enough people out there that would actually love that. They're just too afraid to say to their spouse, "Hey, can we just spend some time together?" Again, engaging in conversations. It's
Right.
those hard
Exactly.
conversations.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I think about like my daughter who, and I see her with her daughters. She's a great mom, but there are times when she's with one of her kids and her phone beeps and she looks. And I always think, man, when you do that, what exactly are you saying?
Yeah.
How is that being perceived?
Yeah.
That this whatever's going on right here is more important than what's standing in front of you.
Yeah.
It probably isn't.
Well,
You
and
can
kids,
get that gingerbread recipe later,
yeah.
right? You don't need it right
They're
now.
smart. They're
Yeah.
so smart and they're so in tune. And I think, and I fully believe we do not as adults give enough to our kid, like enough that are of our kids of what they actually know and feel and they watch. And they're sponges, no matter what age they are. And what you are showing them, they continue to sponge onto. And then we wonder why our kid is glued to social media for however long, or gaming or whatever it is, because over the years that's what they've watched us do, and it's been okay. But then why are we telling them, well, you better put your phone down? Because, well, mom, you never put your phone down, so why are you telling me?
Hmm.
Right.
Right.
And just watching all of that, and like my son has no social media. And I said, do you get bugged at school? He said, no. I said, because if you do, you can blame it on me. I mean, they know I was a cop and have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of social media. But he said, Mom, I watch my friends when we all get together and they are constantly on their phone. And he said that it would be so nice for them to just be able to put their phones down. And so when they come over here, his friends know I'll come down, and if they're on their phone, all of a sudden the phone goes underneath their leg when I come down, because they know that, what, you guys are engaging with each other. You're not
Hmm.
on the phones. And if you are on the phones, the parents have actually said that I can take them away if there's an issue, right? So perfect.
Hmm. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. And I think, because it's new-ish, not that many years that it's been this way, that everybody's learning.
Yeah.
Everybody's in a phase of, what do we do? How much is enough time? How much is too much time? My kids were Nintendo kids, Mario Brothers, that came out when they were little. And so I got a lot of criticism for letting my kids play games. I had two sons in particular that loved, to this day, love gaming, love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but we said, okay, only this much time. But even that much time, people would, how do you let your kids? And it's like, well, it was their sport in a way.
Yeah.
They loved it. And it was very social because
Yeah.
a bunch of kids would come over and they would all play, right? And so it was very social. And to this day, they still play with friends online,
Yeah.
different parts of the world, wherever you are. And it is a way to connect. So it's not all bad, but
No.
it's figuring out the what makes sense. Like I know with classrooms, at first it was no, you cannot have a phone in school in the classroom. And then for a little while it was, well, no, the phone could be a great tool in a classroom.
Yeah.
And then now I think I've heard some going back to no, you can't have a phone in
Yeah.
classroom.
Well, and we all survived. And it's funny because I heard parents say, well, how am I supposed to get a hold of my kid? Well, just like when we were going to school, you call the school. If your child is in class where they're supposed to be, they will get contacted and told that they need to call home. Now, if your child is not in class, then there's way more going on, and maybe there's way more of an issue that needs to be dealt with, right? But there are still landlines in schools, and the teachers have cell phones. So our kids actually don't need cell phones. And the kids have computers at school that they can get onto the web and they can look stuff up and research and do everything on their computers. So, they can even get chat GPT and stuff on computers. So you don't need your phone in order to do that. And I laugh because I had so many parents, tell me, well, I need to get a hold of my kid. Okay. So there's other ways to do it,
Right, right,
right?
right. I mean, if their phone was dead,
Well,
yeah,
exactly.
what are you going to do? Just
Yeah.
there's no other way to get a hold of them? Like
Yeah.
whatever. Of course you can get a hold of them. And maybe part of it is having more conversation at breakfast, saying, hey, by the way, this is going on today.
Yes.
You don't have to text your kid during the day,
Yeah.
or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely is changing things. There was a study done uh, recently in the US, not long ago, that showed that over 50% of people are lonely, suffer from severe loneliness. And I think I'd love your take on it, but I think, all the screens going on in our world take us away from that personal time, that intimate time with people. And yeah, it's lonely when you can't actually talk to somebody there, in whatever in cyberspace, and
Yeah.
instead of sitting right next to you.
Well, and I think looking back now, even during that pandemic that came, that really, I think, jolted up the realities of loneliness and the realities of what people were going through. And, just quickly to kind of go with the pandemic side of how with our classrooms now going virtual, and so many of the teachers and parents were saying, oh, well, mental health, rose. Well, I don't believe it actually rose. I think what happened is everything was now brought forward and it was now brought to the forefront. Mental health stuff in schools and with our youth and with adults has been going on for a long time. But all of a sudden now, when you are stuck in a house with people that maybe you do not get along with, you do not like, you're trying to figure out um, navigating a situation that maybe is toxic or is unhealthy at home, mental health now, holy cow, you talk about it coming out to the forefront, and loneliness, because as many people know, you can be married but still be very lonely,
Mhm.
right? And you can be in a great family, a huge family, and still be so lonely. So again, I think loneliness just started peering its face in very different ways. And that now has kind of opened up stuff to all these stats coming forward with, how lonely people actually are. And yeah, if your only friend or your only friends are Facebook friends, man, that's a lonely life.
Mhm.
Like
It
that's
is.
not even reality.
Right, right, right. And it can change, but it can be hard to change. But
Yes.
but maybe that is one good thing that came out of the pandemic, is to bring that to light.
Hmm.
Knowing that there's that many people that are lonely, then, those of us who aren't, reach out. I mean,
Yeah.
I think probably everybody experiences loneliness in one way or another at some point in life, but to live in it is different, right?
Yes.
Not just a lonely day or a lonely week or whatever, but a lonely life. To live in it is devastating. And so
Yeah.
uh, reaching out is as much as you can, like, whatever you can do, whatever we can do to help each other, we just should. We should
Well,
embrace each other.
and that's one of the big things. So I talk about in my book community because it's so important. And kind of just going back a little bit, youth and grandparents and aunts and uncles, those are so important in youth's lives because many times the youth will tell them stuff that they don't want to tell mom and dad. So that opens up a huge communication side with that and with the youth. And then when you kind of look at everything building as a community, community is so important. And many families, especially the newcomers, come here and think that, well, back home, my village, I had a village that helped raise the kids, the family. Here, there isn't a village. So, how do we create a village? And whether that's with our own peers or with our church group, especially as women, we need to be fixing each other's crowns instead of tearing them down. And that
Mhm.
is so huge, but that's again community. So that, check up on each other, like you said, it's so important. Even if it's a quick text or you think, oh, I don't have 2 minutes, you have 2 minutes. While you're going to the bathroom, sit and text a few people, right? Like, seriously,
Right.
you've
Reach
got a
out.
few minutes. If you have
Mhm.
a few minutes to go stop in a coffee lineup and grab a coffee, you've got a couple minutes to check in on people. And that one check in could be a huge change in how their day was going to go, shaping their day.
Mhm. So true. So true. Your book is everything you say is just so good, and it's so wise, and should be listened to and shouted from the rooftops because it's so smart. One thing that you said earlier that I thought about was that when kids talk to their parents and you ask if they have talked to their parents about this or whatever, and they say my parents either don't want to hear it or I'm afraid of their judgment, or they right away want to start giving advice. And I am so guilty of that. I'm so guilty of that. And didn't necessarily realize I was doing it until not that long ago. And I've got kids in their 40s. And so I'm a slow learner, apparently. But when they're talking to you, it's not necessarily that they want your advice. They just sometimes people just need to vent, right?
Yeah.
Like there's an old book about codependence no more. So good. Oh my gosh, the book changed my life. It talks about unsolicited advice.
Mhm.
And when advice is not solicited, when nobody's asking you, you can keep your advice at home. If they ask for your advice, you can give it, but even then be cautious because
Yep.
they might not want to be hearing. Like I think about two women talking to each other, and one of them's just had this huge fight with her husband, and she's so mad, and that jerk, and she's saying things about him, and then the friend's going, "You're right, he is a jerk. He's so bad." Well, they make up that night, and you're the one that was calling her husband a jerk. That's what she remembers. Like, let her vent, but you don't have to agree with her. You don't have to get on her, say, "You're right."
Yeah.
He's that because they're gonna make up. Like,
Yeah.
don't go there. Same with advice. Like, sometimes people just need a listening ear.
They
And
do.
so
And
don't.
I've told parents, and I've actually literally told parents, you need to just shut up. Just be quiet. For one thing, having your kid come and talk to you, that's a huge win. So don't wreck that at that moment. And so as your kid is talking, I mean, and I'm guilty of it too, already inside, I have already, it's like, oh yeah, I know what they're going to talk about. I already know what I'm going to say. So again, you're not listening to what they're saying. You're not hearing what they're saying, and you're ready to go, but you don't need to, because again, they just want somebody to listen to them so they feel valued. That somebody is just not giving them any advice, not giving them any, well, you should have not done that, or I would have done this differently. Who cares? That's you. That's not them. And I look at, so many parents, and again, I'm one of them, we make assumptions about our kids. Our kids make assumptions about us. We don't come together and actually communicate about those assumptions. What if you sat down with your child one day and said, you know what? I was bullied. This is what happened to me. And, we didn't have phones at the time. So it actually stopped once I got off the bus or walked home from school. I had to go back to the next day, but at least I had 12 hours or whatever it was to kind of decompress and relax. Nowadays, kids don't even have that. It's 24/7 if parents do not take their phone or ask, phone away for the night, that kind of stuff. And so as parents, we forget that again, the kids, yeah, they don't have to walk up whatever, in 3 feet of snow barefoot up the hill, right?
Right, right,
Um,
right.
but now they've got a device that is 24/7 in their face that is sometimes telling them um, how good they are, their self-worth, all of this kind of stuff that we didn't have to deal with.
It's so true. It's so true, and it's so huge. So if you were to say, like, these are my top three pieces of advice to parents, this is what I would tell you to do. This is what I recommend, because even though they're not asking for advice, we're going to pretend that they're all asking for advice.
Yeah,
It's not unsolicited. You're just going to drop the advice. What
yeah.
would be?
Well, I think before even talking, number one, a safe space. Make sure there's a safe space and a safe place that you and your child can come and have. And whether that, again, maybe it's sitting and gaming with your kid for 10 minutes, having them teach you how to game, even if you're rolling your eyes in the back of your head because you hate it. But that 10 minutes has just opened up a realm of goodness for your child to feel they can come to you later on. And again, you might not talk about anything, but you've just created a safe space for your child. Secondly, again, is no judgment. We cannot judge our kids because we do not know, even though we think we do, we don't know what they're going through. So if they come to us, just let them talk, let them say whatever, even if it's one word answers, open that up to them. But every morning, say good morning. Every night, say good night. Make sure that they know they can communicate to you all the time. Leave that open, but just no judgment. The third one is active listening and empathy. Those two things, because you can listen and hear, but the next words that come out of your mouth could completely devastate what has just been said. So make sure that the empathy part is there, um, because that is just so important as well with the active listening.
Mm.
So again, I mean, you know your kids best. And I remember, you were talking about how people were telling you you shouldn't let your kids be on their game for that long. People don't know your kids. You know your kids the best. You know what they need for screen time, what's a good amount of time for phone, all that kind of stuff. That is where you come in as the parent. Nobody can tell you that. So you know your kids. So you also know that with active listening, what that looks like with them. And talk to them. Ask them, like set your boundaries. For instance, somebody had asked me about, well, I want to set boundaries, but I want to have empathy and love while I'm setting these boundaries. I said, well, what about this one where, there's three outfits for your child to pick out. There's the boundary, there's the three, but they get to make the choice of which one they get to pick. So you have now just given that option to them, but the boundary is there, even though they don't really realize the boundary is there. So there's ways of doing that. And that, I mean, yeah, sometimes it's thinking outside of the box a little bit as a parent too.
Right, right, right. And like you said, you know your kid, you should know your kid. And
Yes.
and I love the active listening part because it can be so easy to make assumptions about what they're going to say. And so you're already waiting with your rebuttal
Yeah.
instead of actually listening to the words that are said. And
Yeah.
there's so much communication that's nonverbal. So when you're able to hear the inflection of how things are said and you're, face to face and you're seeing if tears are welling up in their eyes or if they're angry or, whatever's going on with them, it's way different than going, I know he's going to say, my day was great. I hate math. And so I'm just going to say, well, do better at math. What make it you make your day as good as you want to make it. That's what I'm going to say. Well, that's not what he needs to hear,
Yeah.
first of all. And that might not even be what he's saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
great, great, great advice. All of
and
it.
we do it with our friends, we do it with our partners. We don't listen. We already have or think we know what they're going to say. We already have what we're going to respond back with. So I think sometimes, I don't know if that's just human nature. I'm not sure, but it's funny how we do that with everybody.
We do. Well, yes, it can be so easy to do. I lived this year figuring out love and 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, took one word a month and figured out what it is. And patient, that's what love that is patient
Yeah.
it's recognizing that this moment is the most important moment of your life. In the past is in the past. What's in the future is yet to come.
Yeah.
Be present, completely here in this moment. That's showing love that is patient. That when you are truly, fully, completely present. And I'll tell you, I stunk at this. I was horrible at it because I thought I could be in conversation and think about who needed to get to soccer practice, what I was going to make for dinner, who had a meeting later, all of this stuff, right? But I don't think any of us can do that because then
Mhm.
you have your mind in two places. And so be fully engaged with the person in front of you. Be fully engaged with your kid when they're talking to you.
Yeah.
And because later on, when you're my age and your kids are old, you're gonna feel bad if you don't take those moments when they're kids, that you threw moments away that
Yeah.
could have been just wonderful times and bonding and just all the stuff, for your kids. And So listen,
Yeah.
listen in a different way than maybe you've been listening. And then don't talk. I like that. Just don't talk. Don't talk unless they need you to talk or they ask you to talk or whatever. Just listen. Just listening. We all want to feel seen. We want to feel heard. We want to feel loved, right? Well, the greatest way to let somebody feel seen and heard and loved is to just listen and
Hmm.
be in the moment.
Hmm. And the best times are car times, like I call it windshield times, the windshield talks, because sometimes your kids don't have to look at you, but they're still going to talk. Whether
Mhm.
it's drive home from school to or from school or to practices, to sports, to whatever it is, even the grocery store, sometimes those are the coolest times. And again, it's the quality of time. You might only have a 10 or 15-minute drive, but it's amazing what you can have in that 15 minutes.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true. You know, another really great time I found with my kids when they were growing up was a hot tub.
Oh, okay.
A hot tub, you didn't want your electronics in the water, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And you but you want to be in that hot tub because I'm in Michigan. You're in the
yeah.
cold. We're both in the cold. And how nice it is to get warm. And that's a great time. Not everybody has a hot tub, but if you have one, I mean that is a
Yeah,
great time to be with your kid or go use your neighbors or something. I don't know.
yeah.
But it's a good time to talk. This has been so wonderful. And I could talk to you forever and ever and
I
ever.
know.
I know. So we're just gonna have to get together again. That's it.
We
We could
will.
do other cool stuff too, but this is so huge, and I know it's going to have such an impact on so many people. So again, tell people exactly where they can find you, where they can get the book, everything they need to know.
Okay, well, so I'll just show that. So it's, I don't know if you guys can see that. So it's called Youth Truth, and it's on Amazon and Ingram Sparks. So all bookstores and then amazon.com.ca. And my website, they can find me at www.carlaMaySheremata.com. My
Awesome.
email's on there. If you have any questions or just want to chat, send me an email. I love it.
Yes, and CarlaMay is a beautiful singer and a great speaker. So if you need speaker, singer for anything, you'll have your answer. But yeah, you've just given so much wisdom. I just appreciate you so much as a person,
Oh,
as a
thank
friend,
you.
and I love what you're doing and how many people you're going to help. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining us. And until next time, be blessed.